Rachel hadn't meant to text anyone. Not really. It was one of those nights where the silence was louder than anything else, the kind that crept beneath the skin and made your own breath feel like background noise. She sat curled on the corner of her couch, legs tucked under a worn blanket, an untouched glass of red wine on the coffee table, and a half-written email to her manager glowing on her laptop screen. The apartment smelled faintly of takeout and peppermint lotion, and her heart ached in that familiar, stupid way it always did when she let herself think too long. Her fingers hovered over her phone keyboard, trembling slightly as she typed out the words she'd never said aloud. Not to him, not to anyone. It still hurts. I still wonder if I was ever enough. And God, I wish I didn't miss you this much. She stared at it. She wasn't drunk, just tired enough for honesty. The message sat there, unsent, blinking at her like a dare. She meant to delete it, or maybe to copy it into her private journal app. What she didn't mean to do was hit send, but her thumb slipped and the message vanished. Her eyes widened. She fumbled to check the recipient. Her heart dropped. It wasn't the last thread of her ex-boyfriend's number. It was a contact she didn't even recognize. A random number, unfamiliar area code, no name saved. Her pulse kicked. Maybe it didn't go through. Maybe the person changed numbers. Maybe they wouldn't read it. Rachel tossed the phone onto the couch and covered her face with both hands. Nice, she muttered. Real smooth. In another part of the city, Julian Blackstone stood in front of a wall of glass that looked out over Manhattan, phone in hand, unread message notification glowing. He'd just walked out of a board meeting that had run 2 hours too long, filled with backhanded suggestions and veiled threats from partners who smiled too wide. His head hurt. His patience was gone. The text came at the perfect moment. It wasn't a business pitch, not a schedule update. Just one quiet paragraph that felt so raw it cut through the noise in his skull. It still hurts. I still wonder if I was ever enough. And God, I wish I didn't miss you this much. Julian frowned. He didn't recognize the number, no name, no hint of who sent it. But the words sat heavy in his chest like a secret someone had whispered just for him. He didn't reply. Not then. He just stared, trying to remember the last time someone had spoken without filter, without angle. He couldn't. Whoever this woman was, she didn't mean to reach him, but she had. And now, Julian Blackstone, the man who didn't believe in accidents, couldn't stop thinking about a stranger who had bared her soul to the wrong person. Rachel Winters didn't believe in second chances. Not anymore. Not after the way things ended with Kyle. He had once been the person she trusted most, a quiet voice who promised stability in the chaos of her first real job, her first real apartment, and her first time being in love with someone who knew all the ways to lie without blinking. He was also her manager, which should have been the first red flag, but she ignored it in favor of butterflies and late-night texts that felt like confessions. By the time she caught him with someone else from their floor, someone with better lipstick and sharper ambition, she was already too far in to back out gracefully. He didn't even deny it, just gave her a shrug and a line about grown-ups making complicated choices, and that was that. She left the company 2 days later, packed her desk in silence, took her dignity and her half-empty water bottle, and didn't look back. Since then, she had kept her life small, tidy, predictable. A junior accounting job at a boutique media planning firm in Brooklyn, a quiet one-bedroom apartment with string lights on the balcony, grocery lists stuck to the fridge with cat-shaped magnets, and a calendar color-coded down to the hour. She had her routines: Wednesday laundry, Friday takeout, Sunday silence. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, and no one got to rewrite it but her. Rachel didn't date, didn't scroll dating apps while bored in line at Trader Joe's, didn't answer flirtatious DMs or let strangers buy her drinks at networking events. Her heart had grown cautious, not bitter, and she didn't mourn the old version of herself as much as she simply missed the ease with which that girl used to hope. Some nights, she still drafted messages she never sent. Some nights, like the one when she sent the wrong text to a stranger, she forgot to be careful. Julian Blackstone was not the kind of man who noticed random notifications. His phone was filtered, screened, redirected through 4 security layers before even ringing. He lived in a world of leverage and liability, where the wrong headline could cost 8 figures and one whispered rumor could take down a division. He didn't make time for accidents. Yet the message had come through. That night, in the quiet of his high-rise office, with the city stretched out below him like a circuit board of light, he had read a single message from an unknown number and felt something shift. It still hurts. I still wonder if I was ever enough. And God, I wish I didn't miss you this much. No name, no context, just a sentence written like a wound. He didn't respond, not immediately, but he didn't delete it either, and when he read it again the next morning, something inside him, a part-long calcified, softened, just slightly, not enough to admit it aloud, but enough to remember that he too had once asked himself the same question, only in silence, only when no one was watching. He saved the number, not under a name, just a single letter. R. 3 days passed. Rachel almost forgot, almost convinced herself the message had disappeared into the void where all unsent words belonged. Then her phone buzzed. 10:47 p.m. One new message. I don't know who you are, but I felt that pain too. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She thought about deleting it, blocking the number, pretending it never happened, but instead she typed back 2 words. Wrong number. Then hesitated and added softly, but thank you. A pause. Then a reply. Maybe the right message just took a detour. She didn't know why she smiled, only that she did. Rachel didn't expect a reply the next day or the one after. The message she had received, a quiet, unexpected note from a stranger, felt like something suspended in time, a small ripple in the otherwise still pond of her daily routine. But on the 3rd night, at exactly 11:09 p.m., her screen lit up with a new message. It was simple, but disarming. What would you have said if it reached the right person? She stared at the question, thumb hovering over the screen, heart quietly thrumming in her chest. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Her second was to send something funny and brush it off. Instead, she let the truth leak through, in the way she always feared but sometimes craved. I would have said I still miss the version of him I made up in my head, the one that loved me back. The reply didn't come until morning. People are never who we want them to be, but sometimes they surprise you. She reread it twice before replying, then 3 times. Something about his words felt like a hand on her wrist in a dark room, steadying, uncertain, and too warm to pull away from. Over the next 10 days, the messages came almost nightly. No names, no photos, no expectations. They talked like people who had nothing to prove. Rachel shared pieces of her day, the way she hated when people clipped their nails in the office kitchen, how she got irrationally happy when she found a new bakery on her block, how rainy days made her feel more honest. He responded with lines that always seemed measured yet unfiltered, like he was choosing his words carefully, but not guarding his intent. He told her he once fell asleep on a train in Tokyo and missed 3 meetings, that he sometimes dreamed in black and white, that he'd never told anyone what he told her. Not really. Rachel found herself checking her phone in quiet moments, waiting for the buzz. Not out of need, but out of a comfort that had crept in unnoticed. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. It was something more dangerous, intimate. Julian, meanwhile, was losing track of time. He never stayed up late unless meetings demanded it, never let himself get distracted by anything that didn't move his company forward. But this woman, this stranger, had become an exception. He read her messages in the middle of strategy calls, found himself drafting responses during shareholder briefings. He didn't know her voice, but he imagined it. Soft, unhurried, layered with warmth. He hadn't expected to care, but he did. Then came the shift. Rachel was assigned to an audit project for a new corporate client, an events subsidiary recently acquired by Blackstone Media. She groaned when she saw the address. Midtown. Tall glass buildings, fluorescent lights, the kind of corporate environment that reminded her why she kept her world small. Her job was routine, numbers and forms, spreadsheets and signatures. She kept her head down, tried not to make eye contact, but on the third day, a man's voice drifted into the open conference space, deep, even, familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Julian stepped into the office like he owned it because he did. His presence didn't announce itself loudly. It simply settled into the room like certainty. Rachel glanced up, then froze. For a brief moment, their eyes met through the glass. He looked at her the way someone watches something they're not supposed to want. He didn't speak to her then, just passed by. But something in her chest clenched. Julian didn't need to ask who she was. He'd already confirmed her identity. Rachel Winters, quiet, competent, low profile, not the kind of woman his world noticed. And yet, he had noticed her before he ever knew her name. He debated saying something, then decided to wait. The next morning, he passed her table again and paused. "You're new," he said casually. Rachel looked up, startled. "Temporary audit. I'll be out of your hair soon," she answered, half expecting him to nod and move on. Instead, he tilted his head. "You read Steinbeck during lunch," he said. She blinked. "You watched me eat lunch?" He lifted one shoulder, not quite a shrug. "I notice things." She wasn't sure if she should be flattered or unnerved, but she couldn't deny the way her skin prickled when he walked away. That night, her mystery contact texted again. "What scares you most about letting someone get close again?" Rachel stared at the question for a long time, then replied, "That they'll see all of me and still walk away." His response came minutes later. "I wouldn't." She turned her phone face down on the pillow and lay in the dark, eyes open, chest tight, wondering if a person you'd never met could feel more real than the one standing right in front of you. The line between reality and fantasy blurred quietly. Rachel still didn't know who he was. He could have been anyone, a bookstore clerk, a traveling photographer, a barista with a poet's heart. That was the safety of it, that she didn't have to know, that she could love the words and not worry who they came from. But what she didn't realize was that the man behind them had already stepped into her real life. Julian had always operated in two modes, strategic and silent. Every deal, every interaction, every date he'd ever gone on had been built on the assumption that he had to filter, control, curate. But this was different. Rachel was different. He found himself walking slower past the audit room, letting conversations linger longer than they needed to, listening not just to her answers, but to how she breathed before speaking. There were times he almost told her, but he didn't. He was afraid of what might change. On a Tuesday afternoon, fate took over. Rachel was walking out of the office building, her bag slung across one shoulder, earbuds in, eyes fixed on a podcast she wasn't really listening to. She didn't notice the drizzle until she was already halfway down the block, coat unbuttoned, hands stuffed in her pockets. Julian saw her from across the street as he stepped out of a black town car. He hesitated, then crossed, fast enough to catch up, but slow enough not to startle her. "You'll catch a cold," he said. She turned, surprised, and pulled one earbud out. "Excuse me?" "Rain," he said, nodding upward. "You might want to close your coat." She glanced at the sky, then back at him. "You're very observant, Mr. Blackstone." I'm very detail-oriented, he corrected. Occupational hazard. She studied him for a moment. His expression gave nothing away. Neither did his eyes, though they softened just enough when they settled on her mouth. He offered to walk her to the subway. She accepted. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable. And when they reached the entrance, she looked at him and said, "You're not as cold as you pretend to be." He raised an eyebrow. "And you're not as guarded as you think you are." That night, she texted her anonymous contact. "You ever meet someone in real life and feel like you already know them?" He replied instantly. "Yes. Today, actually." Her fingers froze. For a long time, she didn't respond, but her heart knew what her mind didn't want to admit. The next few days passed with a rhythm neither of them disturbed. In the office, Julian was professional but present. Outside of it, the messages continued, slower now, more loaded. She found herself wondering if she was crossing lines, wondering what it would mean if she let herself fall for a stranger and someone real at the same time. Then came the night that changed everything. A networking gala, hosted at a gallery space in Chelsea. Her firm was invited to represent the audit team. She wore a deep navy dress with a square neckline, heels she rarely took out of their box, and hair pulled into a soft twist. When Julian saw her walk into the room, his conversation faltered. Just briefly, but enough for his assistant to follow his gaze and raise an eyebrow. He didn't approach her immediately, watched instead as she laughed politely with another accountant, nodded to the bartender, surveyed the artwork like she actually understood it. She was radiant, in that quiet way, no sparkles, no effort, just presence. Later, they ended up standing beside the same sculpture, both pretending to admire it. He turned slightly. "You clean up well." She smirked. "Careful." That almost sounded like a compliment. "Maybe it was," he said. They spent the rest of the evening orbiting each other. She found herself glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. He was always looking. As the night wore on, the space between them grew smaller, until finally, near the end, as guests began filtering out, she stepped outside for air. He followed. The air was crisp, the sky barely visible between tall buildings. She leaned against a railing, toes aching, lips slightly parted as she exhaled slowly. "Why do I feel like you know me better than you should?" she asked. Julian didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "Maybe because I do." She turned to face him, confused. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Everything in him told him to keep the lie. But something about the way she looked at him, half curious, half cracked open, made it impossible. "The message," he said quietly. "The one you sent that night. It didn't go to the wrong number." Silence dropped between them like glass shattering. Rachel stared, her lips parted, but no sound came out. "I've been replying," he added. "Since the beginning. It was me." Rachel didn't speak, not at first. She simply looked at him, and in that look was the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was full of confusion, realization, and the slow-building ache of betrayal. Her heartbeat slowed and quickened at once, her mind catching up with the implications like dominoes falling one after another. The long nights, the strange way he always knew exactly what to say. The feeling that the man behind those words had been standing right in front of her this whole time. "You knew," she said finally, voice low. "You knew it was me, and you said nothing." Julian didn't move. "I didn't want to break it. What we had through those messages, it was honest. You spoke to me in a way no one ever does, and I didn't want that to change by showing you who I am." Rachel stepped back, slightly, putting a small, almost imperceptible distance between them. "So, you let me keep talking. Let me pour out parts of myself, tell you things I wouldn't even tell my closest friends, all while you what? Observed? filed it away for reference? It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? She snapped, not loudly, but with an edge that cut deep. You had all the power, Julian. You knew who I was. I didn't know anything. I thought I was safe in those words. I thought it was a stranger. I trusted that space because I believed it was anonymous. You took that from me. He exhaled, one hand tightening at his side. I didn't mean to manipulate you. I didn't go looking for you. That night, the message came through, and it stopped me. I don't even remember what I was doing before it. I only remember the way your words felt like something I'd been waiting to hear. She looked away, her jaw tight. You should have told me. I know, he said. I was going to, but every time I came close, I thought, what if she pulls away the second she knows? She turned back toward him, eyes shining, not with tears, but fury and pain twisted together. You were afraid I'd pull away? You're the one who built this whole connection on a secret. You chose that risk for both of us. I fell for you, he said finally, long before I saw you in person. And when I did, I couldn't look away. Not because of how you looked, but because you were real. And everything I'd ever tried to protect myself from, I wanted to run straight into it if it meant being close to you. Rachel shook her head, not in denial, but in disbelief. You say all the right things. You always have. But I can't tell anymore if that's you or just another version you're performing. He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. There's no performance left. You know more about me than anyone. Even now. I meant every word, Rachel. She didn't answer, just stared at him for a long moment before walking past. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't slam the door. She just left. And that was worse. The next few days were a blur. She quit the audit contract early, left a formal, courteous email with her resignation. No explanation, no drama, just clean lines and silence. She changed her number, blocked his, deleted the thread. Her friends asked what happened, but she didn't tell them, not because she was embarrassed, but because there were no words that could capture the shape of this particular hurt. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was the shattering of trust in something she didn't even know she had needed. Julian tried to reach her through every channel he could without crossing boundaries. He waited outside her office once, then thought better of it. He wrote a letter, sealed it, and never mailed it. He drafted a public statement for his PR team, then deleted it. For a man who had built an empire on knowing what to say, now he had nothing. Only the sound of her voice in his head, repeating one line, "You took that from me." What he hadn't realized, what took losing her to understand, was that the connection they'd built through screens had never been anonymous. It had been vulnerable, and vulnerability, once broken, didn't rebuild itself easily. Rachel returned to her routines, slowly. Her apartment no longer felt like a refuge. Coffee tasted bland. Music felt empty. She kept waiting to forget how it had felt when his voice finally matched the words she'd loved. But she couldn't, because what hurt most wasn't that he was someone powerful or that he'd kept a secret. It was that he knew exactly what she needed and still made her feel like she had been speaking into a mirror all along. Julian never believed in chasing what wasn't his. In business, in life, he let go of things that didn't align, that didn't obey reason. But nothing about Rachel had ever obeyed reason. She wasn't just something he wanted, she was something that made every other success feel irrelevant. And now she was gone. He kept her number in his contacts even after she changed it. He knew it wouldn't reach her, but deleting it felt like admitting something final. His days blurred, meetings lost their urgency. People spoke, and he nodded, but his mind remained elsewhere. The city kept moving, but he was no longer part of its rhythm. Late one night, he sat in his office alone, the skyline burning behind him, and opened their old message thread. What remained of it? Not her side. only his. Her replies were gone, but his words were still there, like echoes trapped in digital memory. He scrolled through them slowly, reading each one aloud as if saying them would somehow summon her back. At the bottom, he typed one final message, not expecting it to send, not expecting anything at all. I meant it. Every word. If you ever want to know what silence sounds like without you in it, come find me. I'll be right where you left me. Still waiting. He didn't press send. He saved it in drafts. Rachel, meanwhile, told herself she was fine. She woke up on time. She folded her laundry. She remembered birthdays and replied to emails with exclamation marks in the right places. But inside, the silence pressed harder than she imagined it would. She had loved him. Maybe not from the start. Maybe not until the moment he stood outside that gallery and shattered everything with one sentence. But it didn't matter now. Trust was fragile, and once broken, even love couldn't always fix it. Weeks passed. The weather changed. People around her moved on, laughed, celebrated small things. But Rachel kept seeing him in the places he used to stand. She heard his voice in her mind at night, especially when her phone buzzed and her fingers itched with a reflex that no longer had a purpose. Then one day, as she was scrolling through old files on her cloud account, she found a screenshot, one of their first exchanges. His words. Maybe the right message just took a detour. She stared at the screen until it blurred. That night, she didn't sleep. At sunrise, she got dressed and walked to a small cafe they had both once mentioned in a passing conversation. It was the kind of place no one really noticed. Quiet, brick walls, a menu written in chalk. She ordered tea and sat near the window. Minutes passed, then an hour. She was about to leave when the door opened, and a familiar silhouette appeared in the morning light. Julian looked tired, more human than she'd ever seen him. He froze when he saw her. She didn't stand, just looked at him, heart thudding, fingers wrapped tightly around her mug. He walked over, carefully, like any sudden movement might scare her away. "You're here," he said. She nodded. "You told me where to find you." He sat down across from her, didn't reach for her hand, didn't try to smile. Just let the air settle. "I didn't come here to forgive you," she said, voice steady. "I didn't expect you to," he replied. "I just wanted to see your face again, without the lies, without the phone between us." He met her gaze, and for the first time in weeks there was no distance in it. "I was selfish," he said, "not because I lied, but because I made a choice that belonged to you." Rachel's lips pressed together, but she didn't interrupt. He continued. "I thought I could protect what we had by keeping the truth from you, but I didn't realize that trust doesn't need protection. It needs honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." Silence again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was soft. Bare. She finally whispered, "Do you still have that message?" He blinked. "Which one?" "The one I sent that night, the very first." He nodded. "I never deleted it." Rachel looked down at her tea, fingers loosening slightly. "Then maybe we can start from there, not to fix what broke, but to build something better." And just like that, something shifted. Not a clean restart, not a fairy tale reunion, just two people, no longer hiding, daring to begin again. 6 months later, the message still sat in Julian's phone, untouched. It was no longer a wound, no longer a secret, but something preserved like a first letter from someone who once didn't know your name, but already knew your soul. Rachel never asked him to delete it. She never asked for proof that what they had now was different from what it had been. She simply stayed, and that was enough. They didn't rush. They didn't make grand announcements or pose for glossy magazine covers. Their relationship wasn't built for spectacle. It was built in mornings, where she stole his coffee and nights where he folded her laundry without asking, in the moments when she paused mid-sentence and he finished the thought, in the rare arguments where both of them stayed in the room even after the heat passed. They weren't perfect, they didn't try to be, but they were honest now. That was the difference. Sometimes, late at night, they would sit on the balcony wrapped in the same blanket, watching the lights flicker across Manhattan. Rachel would lean her head against his shoulder and ask, "What if I had never sent that message?" Julian always answered the same way, quiet and certain. "Then I never would have learned how to listen." She smiled at that, not because it was romantic, but because it was true. Their story didn't begin with a plan. It began with a mistake, a mistyped number, a confession meant for someone else. But what came after was theirs entirely. And sometimes, the messages that aren't meant to be sent are the ones that reach exactly where they need to go. Because some wrong numbers don't lead to strangers, they lead you home.